Close enough. It's 2:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Might as well jump on it. Today is going to be an important presentation because we're going to go over everything you wanted to know on diabetes. A lot of what is going to be presented is not necessarily public knowledge. What you will hear here is going to be one of the first times that you hear stuff like this. How's it going, Stephen? The poster boy of diabetes is here, Stephen Raphael. For those of you who didn't see my broadcast before last, Stephen had an A1C of 17, which means he was literally ripping at death's door to die. He was about to slip into eternity, but he turned it around with fasting. Hello, Ms. Lindsay. Sherry, hello. We're a slow starter today, but we're getting started. Hello, Joni. So we do have actually an awful lot to cover. Rebecca, hello. Once Upon Her Time. Omad Outlaw is here. Matt Swanson. Snowy Minneapolis. Last I was up in Minneapolis was 2002, and it was during a warm front. It got all the way up to 30 degrees, and nobody knew what to do. It was so warm for Minneapolis. And the cold front came at the end of the week. It knocked us back down to 16. We stayed for a week, and we drove up to International Falls and Duluth, and it was very beautiful. Hello from Seattle, where it apparently stays gray and rains forever. I'll take that too. Hi, Robin. Hi, Meatball. So it doesn't matter how you found this channel. If you're watching this, whether we're live or if this has already gone to be posted, a lot is going to be covered today on diabetes, and a lot of it is not favorite information. Hello, Susan. But it's very real information. Now, how many of you, by show in the comments, how many of you get checked? You get your A1C checked yearly. You might just put a reference to that. This is something that up until recently nobody thought to do. Now, everybody just assumed that their body is going to perfectly regulate all of their chemical levels. Then, if you don't, you need to get a yearly physical, whether you're a man or a woman. If you're out of high school, you need to do this. I know a guy who works with TSA down here. He is 24, and he has an A1C of about 9. So he has uncontrolled diabetes, and he's not fat at all. So do not assume. A1C is the average glucose reading for the last 3 to 5 months. So you go and you do a prick, and they read your blood and say how high your sugar has been at the highest point to the lowest point. So A1C is super important, but that's not the only number. You need fasting glucose, a fasting glucose test. And when you get those 2 different tests, if your sugar is above a fasting glucose of 140, you are diabetic. So but we're going to get into that. So let's see. Thank you, Tressa, for being a part of us. So that's the problem. People go through and they assume that they're just fine. Don't assume that you're just fine, because we live in a world with too much food, and it is extremely difficult to regulate, which is why this channel exists, so that you can control your relationship with food. If you can't, you're going to die. It's that way. If you're under 17, you got a while, but if you're over that, your time is limited. Looking forward to the chat. Deborah, good to have you. So diabetes is a disease. When you think diabetes, think on a continuum. Diabetes, it's like birth to death. There's levels of growth, and when you get to a certain point, you get to around 26, you stop growing and you slowly begin to die. Well, it's like that, and I know that's a very negative way to look at life, but it's very often true. So the same thing with diabetes. The signs show up very early, and then they get progressively worse, and you don't think about it that way. But you have to think about it that way. But diabetes is a disease of fullness and emptiness. And this is what makes it so weird. And it's a disease of insulin deficiency and insulin overabundance, which causes insulin resistance. So you can be insulin deficient and insulin resistant at the same time, which comes from highs and lows. That's why this happens. So you have the sugar that gets too high, your body blocks it, and then it gets too low, your body needs more of it. And it's the dysregulation of it that causes all of these troubles. So now, for those of you, you don't have to write all this down or type all this. I'm going to put this in the comments. Healthy ranges of blood glucose levels. When you are fasting, your blood glucose should be between 66 and 99. Better 89, but in that range when you are fasting, it should be within that range somewhere. Mine is usually 72 to 68 to all the way. The highest I've ever had was 84 in a fasted state. That is your body's ability to regulate keep it at a base level, just going through the day when you have not eaten and you don't have any food in your stomach. Post-meal or postprandial, your blood glucose levels should be between 100 and 140. That's mine, to give you an idea, is about 106 to 110 after I eat a meal, all the way up to the highest I've ever seen is about 131 that I pricked on several occasions. Now, some people will fast higher. They'll have a little bit higher numbers, but you should not have higher than 140 after you have eaten. Your sugar should top out, and then it should start coming back down. That's a healthy post-meal response. This does not mean that if it ever goes higher, that you're diabetic. It can briefly go higher, but it should immediately come back down. 141 to 200 is pre-diabetic. So, for instance, my mother, who's never had diabetes, the last about 10 years, she has lost a little bit of control, so that when she goes out and eats a Mexican meal with us or Cajun meal, or her sugars will hit about 175, and then it will slowly come back down. Rebecca, that's a healthy glucose. 79, 78, that's a good, actually perfect fasting blood glucose level. So now above 201 after a meal is a diabetic number. It should not be getting that high. 201 all the way up. If it's above 400, you are in serious trouble. And if it's above 600 to 800, like Stevens used to be, then you had better call an ambulance, because you're not going to be around very long at all. Your breath is going to become very fruity. You're going to become super tired. You're going to be urinating and thirsty at the same time in a horribly vicious cycle, and then you're going to fall into a coma and you're never going to wake up. Can you have diabetes on OMAD? Well, a lot of people they find intermittent fasting, OMAD, through because they have diabetes. They're looking to control it without meds. So you won't get it from OMAD. That would destroy the entire reason of attempting to redeem yourself. So let's go over the early warning signs. Some of these you have not heard that suggest you're going to get diabetes. Keep in mind, these are not completely in and of themselves a guarantee that you will get them, but it is a strong implication that you will end up with diabetes. Gradually, you're going to be working your way toward it. So here's the first one: sleepiness after the meal. This does not mean you ate a big meal and then you feel like you can relax on the couch and maybe take a 10-minute nap. This is the feeling that something is wrong, where you cannot function without closing your eyes for a few minutes. This is the irresistible urge that makes you feel like you have been injected with a sedative by a doctor after a meal. If this is a problem for you, You need to work on lowering the size of your meals. If you're already on OMAD, good. You'll regulate in time, but still watch the size of your meal. Number 2, hypoglycemia. This is the precursor to diabetes. It basically is the opposite, but it's like the orbit of a planet. It's like a planet that's dying. On the movie Interstellar, for those of you who saw it with Matthew McConaughey, the Earth is getting dust storms just like Mars, planet-wide dust storms where, because the climate, the planet is starting to die. Well, one of the early signs is that you become extremely shaky and jittery after you eat. Now, there are other causes for hypoglycemia. Hypothyroid, adrenal insufficiency. We're not talking about those. We're talking about a consistent low blood sugar feeling. It's your body having to overcompensate and overshoot your blood glucose with fewer beta cells. And the reason your body's doing that is because you have fewer beta cells. Your body's destroying them. So your body has to use the ones you have to overproduce insulin to try to account for what the amount of sugar you have in your system. Whereas if you were healthy, you wouldn't even know it. You'd go through the day, you'd eat, you'd be ready to go back to work. So that's hypoglycemia. Number 3, tingling after a meal, usually in your legs or extremities. This usually happens between 15 and 45 minutes after you eat, and it is accompanied by another one on our list here, a mild flu feeling. But tingling after a meal, tingling in the legs, that is an indication that your blood glucose is going up too fast. Number 4, Dawn syndrome. This is the condition where your fasting blood glucose gradually gets higher on its own, and you start to wake up in the morning and maybe your blood sugar is 112 or 120 or 130. That is an early indicator of autoimmune diabetes, and you need to follow the steps I'm going to give you when we talk about what to do. If you're starting to see high fasting blood glucose, that is when you have not eaten, you need to go get checked for autoimmune diabetes. And then number 5, the one I mentioned in connection with tingling, is a mild flu feeling after you eat. If you feel like you're getting sick after you eat, that is another indicator that your body's not regulating the sugar you're taking in. And therefore you feel kind of ill because you have food particles. Usually that gets back to a leaky gut. Itchy armpits. Here's one you didn't hear about. Itchy armpits. If you have, not related to anything allergy-wise, if you have recurrently itchy armpits, that is a sign of diabetes. Number 7, non-swollen and small dry skin patches that feel like sandpaper. This is usually something the size of a silver dollar. It might show up for a week on your wrist or your arm or your leg or your rib cage or somewhere, and it feels like sandpaper, but it's not in any way visible or swollen unless you go to touch it. That's an indication with the way your body's dealing with sugar. Number 8, this is primarily women. This is skin tags. UPCOS ladies, sometimes they end up with a lot of skin tags, but that is an indication of that your body's not processing sugar. And the next one, number 9, dark patches under your arms, between your thighs. It tends to be there from excessive insulin. Let me catch up on the comments here. Welcome for those of you just joining us. I'm in a hardcore plateau. What can I do? Well, you can keep going. Remember, you got to give yourself 4 to 6 weeks. I have been in one that lasted 3 weeks and about 4 days, and it was very tough to get past. Do not give up if you have any plateaus. If your body didn't have plateaus, something would be wrong, because it's just not normal. So we were at dark patches. Now we're at blurred vision. This is an indicator about 45 minutes after you eat, your vision becomes extremely blurry. Your eyes start watering. You start blinking frequently. That is a sign that you're not handling sugar well. Number 11, red skin with darker red patchy hair follicles. This usually shows up on the legs of people over 45, and it looks like a little prickles around the follicles of the hair. That can be an indicator of diabetes or pre-diabetes. Number 12, receding gums. That is apart from poor dental hygiene. If you don't have poor dental hygiene, you're taking care of your teeth, and you still have receding gums, they're retreating around the roots of your teeth, that is an indicator of type 1 diabetes in its beginning stages. 13, frequent sicknesses and infections, particularly urinary tract-based infections. And this can affect men too, but primarily affects the ladies. If you are fighting off recurrent yeast infections and things like that, you do need to get checked, because your bladder will be attempting to rid itself of excessive sugar, and as a result, you'll end up with some trouble. Extreme thirst and urination. Now, these last two are the last one in particular, but this last one, this number 14, extreme thirst with urination, is when it's further along. So what you're going to finally notice is you become thirstier, perhaps also hungrier, and then you are urinating, you're also thirstier, which is an indicator that your body's taking in more sugar, it's not able to process it. And the 15 are the autoimmune markers. Do you think OMAD can be done if someone had type 2 diabetes? Yes, it just depends. And here's how you tell. Can you fast? If you can fast, if you feel full, you're okay. If your sugar is getting too low, you're going to have to do some damage control and learn to elevate your sugar through occasional drinks. Some don't maintain. They get too low and then they're too high. If that is you, fasting may not be a long-term solution for you. You may end up doing little tiny plate meals or something. But most people can do that. They can go to one meal, and then since their sugar's too high, it has the day to come down, and they're going to find that it's going to eventually start coming down with every meal. So yes, almost all type 2 diabetics can do it. Occasionally I run into someone who can't, but that's very rare. Does it matter if you work out before or after eating on OMAD? No, it does not. Whichever you feel the most energy. I've done both. I tend to do about 6 hours after I eat now, if I work out. Steven says, I urinated 19 times a night. I kept track. There's a man who's on top of things. Yes, that's something about, I hear stuff like that. That's insane. You can, drink all the soda or water in the world and not urinate that many times unless you're diabetic. The last one, number 15, is you have one of the autoimmune markers. And again, I'm going to put these in the notes section, so that you can revisit them. If you're not catching this live, you'll be able to see these in the comments. ICA, you should test negative for this. This is one of the pancreas attackers. GADA or GAD6-5. This is a glutamic acid, and it can affect you in different ways. If you have this, it can mean that you are hypothyroid or secondary hypothyroid, like I am, or it can mean you're going to get stiff man syndrome, or it could mean you're going to get type 1 diabetes. Remember I got scared in 2017. I went to the doctor. The high score is 1.1. I scored 158. So I had, the nurse said, you better prepare to become diabetic, because you're going to be on insulin at this rate. And I went and got other opinions, and they disagreed. They said it sometimes doesn't happen like that. But it usually, when you see that, it means that you're headed for a life of insulin injectors. I've gotten several opinions since then, and they tend to think that it's because of my hereditary thyroid condition that I get from mom's side of the family. They don't think that my blood sugar levels remain in perfect control. But you want to look for GAD6-5, GAD6-5, or GADA. And then the next is IA-2A. That's a pancreas eater. This is the thing that your body produces to chomp away your beta cells. And if you have that, it means that even if you got a transplant with a new pancreas, it would not work, because your body would attack it and kill it. IAA is the next test. Ask your doctor for IAA, which is another autoimmune. And then finally, ZNT8A. ZNT8A. Now, you won't, if you're not an endocrinologist, that will not make any sense to you. I'm probably boring you. But if you take this into your endocrinologist and you ask for a full workup and you give them those numbers and you say, I need to have those numbers, you can get them to me and I'll be able to make sense of them, or you can have your doctor explain them to you. And if you see those things, get your A1C, two others, by the way, that I somehow forgot, the most important ones. A1C, which I've already mentioned. And the next is C-peptide. C-peptide has a beginning of about 0.8 all the way to 4. Someone like these ladies in Walmart on the scooters with the big sopapilla arms and the really bad skin, and the big gigantic ladies that are just scooting around because they can't walk and maybe they have an oxygen tank. These are those, they have a very high C-peptide, and that means insulin resistance. You can go to the doctor and look at your C-peptide and A1C alone and see whether you're in any sort of trouble diabetic wise. If you have a score of about 2.5 to 3, that's insulin resistant. If you have somewhere in the high ones, you're doing just fine. Low ones, you're doing just fine. But if, on the other hand, it's lower than about 0.6, that means you are becoming type 1 diabetic because you don't have a way to control your blood. You don't have enough insulin being made by your body. So you want between 0.8 and about 1.9 to 2. You don't want 2 or 4, 3 or 4, which suggests you have a gut on you and you just have a lot of insulin resistance. So that explains C-peptide. A1C, C-peptide, and then the 5 tests that I gave you. Those are the things you should take to your endocrinologist to find out if you have an autoimmune diabetes. By the way, I'm going to start answering questions again. Let me just finish here. What you need to determine, the reason you need to go to your endocrinologist if you struggle with blood sugar at all, or you suspect you might, is because you want to know early on if it's autoimmune or if it is just something you created through eating too much. And we're going to get to that. Okay, will OMAD fix high cortisol? It will if you lower your cortisol, if you do it in a smart way by not overtaxing your body. Naturally, being in a fasted state adds some level of stress, but if you are not overtaxing yourself with activity and exercise, if you are allowing yourself to rest, then it will easily come down. You can, by eating sensibly and by eating something that you want, try to take the stress out of the fasting experience by setting a regular pattern. You don't want shock, you don't want surprise, you don't want to tax your body. Does fasting cause gallstones? No, but it can aggravate because of the shock that fasting puts on the body. It can, if you have stones, it can aggravate them. And I did this when I started. I had the beginnings of gallstones. They were really small, thankfully, and they dissolved on their own. But I was in so much pain. You'll be able to tell because you'll get a lower abdominal pain about the 3rd day of fasting, and your body is going to start really making you pay for it. If you do have a problem, I would go and make an appointment and get x-rayed to see how big they are, or whatever test they do. They'll be able to tell you if there's a problem. Most people can reverse them. Drinking distilled water, this is why I recommend drinking distilled water. It will destroy gallstones in pretty short order. Even if you, especially those of you who are insulin resistant, or you have any sort, you get a lot of, some of you also who use a lot of greens for juicing, they have oxalates. You need to be drinking distilled water so that you're not collecting the oxalates and getting kidney stones, especially those of you who are prone to kidney stones. I had one in 2004. I'll never forget the day. I had to get up at 3 a.m. and go. My wife at the time drove me to the emergency room. It is male childbirth. You do not want it. And it came from drinking 3 liters of Dr. Pepper every day. I used to be such an unbelievable fat ass, you guys know, that I would do it all the time. I ended up with a kidney stone. So you drink distilled water to offset any accumulation. That's why I believe in that. That's why I made a video about it. I used to have warts and skin tags when I was fat, but they fell off. Yeah, they will. Your body will stop supplying the abundance of insulin, and it'll start to rebuild itself. That's why that happens. That's why some of these ladies with the dark patches, when they start fasting, the dark goes away because they're not making all that insulin that's getting blocked by the body. It's pooling up in the body, and it's getting stuck under places where there's less circulation. Could you also talk a bit about brain insulin resistance, like brain fog? I suffer from brain fog, but high cortisol and insulin resistance symptoms are so similar. I am skinny. Can I still have type 2? Yes, you can. That's a lot to chew on. Let me do. Brain insulin resistance is just kind of the way your body reacts. You don't have a whole lot of choice in how it's like, whether or not some people get cold hands or cold feet with a condition. It's just kind of how your body processes it. I don't know why. But brain fog, have you been tested for hypothyroid or any thyroid disorder? Usually brain fog can be associated with type 2 diabetes, but usually there's an autoimmune factor. But I'm going to go into more of the type 2 and why you have it. It has been 3 months with OMAD. I started with 16.8, then OMAD. I am back to 16.8. I need to lose the last 15 pounds. Any suggestions? Is there a particular reason you went back to 16.8 rather than just the one meal? With the last 15 pounds, my suggestion is always begin to incorporate light and moderatable exercise, and understand that you're not going to lose as fast as before because you're not carrying that much weight. It doesn't require that much to keep you moving. So you know how to be tested. Everybody who's listening. I'm going on a cruise tomorrow. Can I go to 16.8 instead of OMAD? Can I have carbs? Of course. Forget about the carbs thing. Don't worry about the carbs thing. The carbs aren't going to hurt you. You'll probably do better without them. You'll probably do better with them. You guys know I do a very carb. I'm not a friend of the low carb movement unless if it really helps you, then of course go ahead and do that. By the way, you guys who are feeling bad after your meals, when you eat a carby meal, listen, you're probably over 40. It's not going to feel like when you were 18 and you could go put down 3 Big Macs and finish out the day like a hummingbird. You're not going to feel that way because your stomach doesn't have the acidity anymore to digest the meal. Don't blame the carbs. That's just, you have to eat. I had an endocrinologist tell me this. You have to learn how to age. You have to realize that a smaller meal for you, maybe more protein dominated, may be a better idea. There's no harm in that, but you're not vilifying carbs when you say that. Go on your cruise, do what you want, go to 16.8. The problem is I don't recommend that for bingers, because what you're going to end up doing is you're going to stretch those 8 hours and you're going to eat like hell, and you're going to be worse off than if you had just eaten a large meal. You have to navigate those situations. When I'm traveling, that to me is the easiest time to stay on board, because then all you got to do is buy 1 serving of something and finish out for the day. To me, that's easier. Does it ever get easier? Greta, it gets easier. Once you're a week in, 2 weeks in, it gets progressively easier, minus 1 or 2 difficult days here and there. After you get to a month, you've got it made. You're not going to fall off then. Carbs on OMAD for a type 2. Okay, if any experience about the relation between insulin resistance, sleep apnea, please touch on this a bit. Sleep apnea, I used to be one of the world's worst snorers. I could be upstairs in my mother's bedroom sleeping and wake everybody up downstairs as a fat guy. Usually that's associated with body size. Carbs are okay, as I mentioned. They're not the enemy. You'll lose faster on carbs usually than protein. It's just a fact for most everybody. However, some people don't feel good on carbs, so they do a protein-based approach, which is fine if it works for you. If any experience about insulin resistance, sleep apnea, usually that's a hypothyroid thing. Usually it's not insulin resistance that's doing that. There's some other underlying condition. If someone is dealing with blood sugar issues, would you suggest a different strategy than the 1-plate rule? Anybody can chime in there who's got your different experience. My experience has been that even though your blood sugar will get a little bit higher at first, it's not going to stay higher. It's going to gradually come down. So Does smoking break the fast? No, it does not. I am as against smoking as you can be. It's terrible. I think it's a terrible thing. But if you want to do that, it's not going to break the fast. I've seen some talk about that. You're not taking in calories. There's no way you can break the fast. So, and in fact, it's hard on your body. But look at how many people smoke and tend to be thinner percentage wise. It has no bearance on anything. So let's talk about why this is happening. Why is diabetes this much of a problem? You've been told by rather clueless people that diabetes comes from eating cakes and cookies and breads and things of that nature. But that's false. And the reason you know it's false is because you know a lot of people who are fat and diabetic as all get out, but they're not diabetic. Their blood sugars are fine. I know a guy right now, he's about 440. He works for me. He's 5'6" and 440 pounds. Very big guy. He's got perfect blood sugar levels. As a big guy, I had great blood sugar levels. I was never higher than about a 5.6 A1C, to give you an idea. 5.7 and above to 6.4 is pre-diabetic, and then 6.5 and above is diabetic, to give you an idea. For those of you who have no reference point. Mine right now is 5.2, my A1C. The lowest it has been is 4.9. So on a straight fasting regimen. So let me tell you, you can control, your A1C is determined by you. Yes, Susan, zero soda, any diet soda is fine. You're not going to gain weight from it. But why is this happening? Here's the real reason. It's because you are genetically subjected to having fewer beta cells. And I'm going to explain why. You were born at a certain height, with the propensity to grow to a certain height. You were born with black hair as opposed to brown or blonde or whatever hair color you happen to have. Your body regulates some things genetically, and it offers certain weaknesses. To give you an idea, I was born with a smaller hip on this side, like my Uncle Ed. My Uncle Ed was if you look on the way the bones are shaped for my hip muscles, one is normal like this, the other one is like this. So when I'm old, I'm gonna have a broken hip because it's just genetic. The doctor noticed it when I was born. Certain things you have. So if you have diabetes, it's not because you're eating cakes. That's just aggravating it. It's because you have a genetic weakness and you got to a point where your body broke down either earlier or later. You might be 20 years old, like the guy I told you about when we started the video. He's a young Spanish male, six-pack abs. He's in great shape. He can run rings around most anybody, probably in this city. But he has a very high A1C, and the doctor is worried about him because he just turned 24. So what did he do? Did he go out and binge on beer and all of a sudden come back diabetic? No, it's because he was born with fewer beta cells, so that anytime he eats, he's maxing out his potential. So if he eats a cake, that will be too much for him. If he eats eggs and bacon, he'll be able to be okay. But you see how a genetic flaw or limitation limits you. But it's not that your body did something wrong. It's just the way. It's like someone being born a dwarf, very short, unusually so, or someone being born with a balding gene. Obviously, it's not really a flaw. It's just a characteristic that results in a weakness. So that's the first thing. The next thing is old age, cancer, or overwork from gluttony as a result of the same. So you're genetically inhibited, but you've overworked your system. So if you go on a binge and you have limited beta cells, then naturally you're going to set up a cycle of insulin resistance because your body's saying, no, we don't need all this. We don't need this insulin in the body. We're going to have to block it back. So you set up a cycle of insulin resistance, and it's the same genetic factors. You either have too few beta cells or you have some other genetic weakness with your liver that results in your system being overloaded. Why isn't my system overloaded? If I go out and have an entire cake, my body will not allow it to get out of control because that's not my weakness. Now, a weakness I do have is the thyroid because our family, we didn't come with good thyroids. My father's side, they don't have that problem, but mother's side, they do. Well, who am I going to blame? Who am I going to blame? Well, there's no blaming anybody because that's the nature of you being you. So for those of you, let me stop here and before I get back to answering questions. The last thing connected with the genetic weakness, your body has succumbed to an autoimmune attack out of genetic expression. This is where a child who is 9 starts getting sick and the parents take them to the doctor and they have juvenile diabetes. They have type 1 diabetes. They have to learn how to inject insulin. Yes, it's the nature of the beast. It is, that's the result of your body expressing itself in an incorrect way. So a friend of mine in Australia who might be watching this maybe, has a condition where when she was young, she started to get sick. They took her to the doctor and said, your A1C is 1200 and off the charts, or your blood sugar is 1200. And she kept going to sleep and they couldn't keep her awake. She was going into a coma because she was going to die. Well, she had 0. At some point earlier the previous year, her cells divided in a way that made it to where her body's targeting that, saying, this is not us. Now, notice what I did not say here. I did not say you've had too many sweets or you're just fat. That's what people say, which is stupid and is going to be proven wrong. You do not become diabetic by being fat for reasons already mentioned. You do not become diabetic because you're fat. You become fat usually because you're diabetic. You're just at a different level that it hasn't manifested itself yet. But again, not necessarily. People are going to the way of thinking that type 1 and type 2 diabetes are really the same. That's where I'm heading here in this conversation. The idea that you have type 1 and type 2, they're just practical differences. So-called juvenile onset versus adult onset, that's old terminology. Nobody really acknowledges it anymore because it's not correct. So let me stop here and say, for those of you who contact me and they get so mad because they see me with a carby meal, just take some time and grieve. Mourn your body's inability to handle sugar. It's no different than my inability to handle smoke. I've never been able to smoke. Some people can. It makes me, it just tears me up. Some people have tolerances for different things. Make peace with your body because you don't have the option yet to get another one. If you were living 100 years from now, then you could, but you don't have that option. So what can you do? You can just go on and make peace with somebody just texted me, with what you have. So go ahead and mourn, but please stop giving others a hard time about it. Some of us can handle sugar, some of us cannot. But the last point to cover here, due to aging and a lack of stomach acid, and I touched on this already, the reason some of you guys are gradually becoming diabetic the older you get. You really kind of do. You may not ever become diabetic, but if you're 55 and you're watching this and you're dreading the fact that you have a spaghetti meal sitting in front of you, that's when you need to go back to my point about learning to age well. You're slowly progressing the way all life does to a less degenerate state. You're becoming degenerate in terms of cellular efficiency. So you need to go and juice celery. Well, we're going to get into that. You need to start making changes as you're able to, not just with OMAD. But that's why this is happening. Due to aging and a lack of stomach acid, your body's not able to consume the way it used to, which is a stage of disease progression. But it's one that you're totally on safe ground. You can totally reverse the same way Raphael and others who have been here, Stephen and others who have had great success reversing their diabetes. It's not too late. Okay, let me go back and get the questions I missed. I wanted to get all that out because I was afraid I wasn't going to get to it. Here's one. Let me go back. Your opinion on the raw meat eaters, they drink blood. Oh, I'm no fan of that, man. I mean, I could never do it, but also blood contains, even treated blood, like with USDA meats, you can still get pathogens. You can still attract things. It is a terrible idea. I'm in no love with that. For those of you carnivore people, if you're watching your cholesterol and you don't have a problem with it and you feel great and who am I to tell you you're wrong? But I think it's a terrible idea, and I think it's really, really bad. You're bound to have some problems somewhere along the way. That's just my thinking. Follow your own path, but you'll get no love from me on that. I don't recommend that. I think it's an atrocious idea. And are you going to keep doing that forever? Are you going to keep doing that forever if you are on this blood eating raw meat fix or eating any meat fix? I think you're setting yourself up for trouble. My health started declining after gaining a bunch of muscle on an unhealthy bulk type diet. Then my health came crashing down after a while. I believe this came from too much sugar and overtraining. Here's why I can tell you why it happened. You overloaded your kidneys. These little 24-year-olds that go out there and they get you to drink this creatine and they get you to drink all of this crap that all it does is elevate your liver enzymes, and the uric acid jacks up your kidneys. That's what you got sick from. You felt terrible. I did that in around 2000. I bulked up. I nearly had 18-inch arms. I had 17.3-inch arms. I went on a bulk phase. I bought a bag of powder called Super Weight Gain. It was the last thing I needed. Super Weight Gain. I was at 352 pounds, and go back to my first video, the one where I have the muscle shirt on my intro video for this channel. And that's me masked up. I look like a club bouncer who could throw you out. I felt miserable. My blood pressure was 170 over 115. My face would get beet red, and I would hear my heartbeat in my ear every time I got off the couch. I felt terrible, but I would go to the gym and psych myself up and drink 2,600 calorie shakes per day, plus eat stuff like French fries and hamburgers and sausage. And I hurt thinking back to those days. Your health came crashing down because you got on this hype of, if you're not muscular, you're not in shape. So you got all these kids doing their YouTube channels who are at the height of their testosterone production saying, you need to look like me. These stupid little kids, and I'm not jealous of them. They're just stupid. That's these guys who are in the buff up. Get rid of these people. You know what the normal amount of muscle is? Take any of the bodybuilders, Flex Wheeler, Ronnie Coleman, any of these guys who used to be super huge and now they're having massive health problems. That's what you're dealing with. Look at them now. They've lost all their muscle and they have just a normal amount of muscle that a normal human should have. You should be able to go to the gym or your local community gym or wherever you go and occasionally tax your muscles twice a week and get plenty of results from that. If you're one of these people who has to go bucking up around people to look good, or they have to have a washboard abs approach to things, you are falling for another trend. And you're actually a pitiable human being because you can't look like that forever. You can't go around with 26-inch arms. Hulk Hogan, he testified before Congress in 2002 that he still had 22-inch arms back from when he did have 24. You can go and see old videos. You realize the health of those guys? They're in terrible health. An exception is Lou Ferrigno, who is 60, I think 65, and is still maintaining. But most of them, you go look at them, they're not carrying that much weight. Do not fall for these musclehead little egotists who go around trying to look buff. Guys, you are trying to hide insecurity, and it's really manifest. Please don't doubt me on that. I mean, it's really true. But that's why you don't ever do any of the muscle. Your body turns all of that protein into sugar. That's why if you want to spike your insulin, go and take a protein shake. I guarantee you'll have a higher sugar than if you eat just dairy or you eat Chinese food or you eat fruit, or even if you eat dried fruit that is very high in sugar. Take a big protein shake and stuff it down with a bunch of protein. See if you don't crash your sugars. Look me up and tell me I'm wrong on that. You'll find that I'm absolutely right on that. That's the worst way you can go. Your body does not handle protein in mass quantities. There's a reason that eating holistically, you get a smaller amount of protein. You get 40 to 70 to 80 grams in a whole day, maybe less, versus all of the other percentage. That's how you're supposed to eat. If you eat a plant-based diet, you don't have these troubles. You don't have elevated liver enzymes. You never have that kind of trouble with a plant-based diet. I was neither fat. I was never fat either. Not sure how to heal this. Man, you better drop the protein routine. Okay, I'm going to move on. Drinking makes me sick. It does me too. Oh, I don't drink at all anymore. I remember just thinking about it, thinking about my last Jack Daniels binge, which was about 11 years ago. I still want to run in that bathroom right now. My new house here in Round Rock, Texas. I just moved this week. I want to run in there right now and upchuck, just thinking about my drinking binges of old. When you saw me on the big pictures in the early part of my intro video again, I was drinking away, man. I used to drink, and I'll never drink again. Your opinion on Dr. Noon Amin Ra? I have looked at that guy. I have actually emailed that guy, and I never heard back. I don't know what to think of that. He sounds. He never had a weight problem. He never had anything. I don't really necessarily have an opinion on it, but it doesn't sound credible. I know that Vegan Gains did a video on him, calling him out, claiming he's a fraud, but didn't. I don't know what to think. I feel like almost all the food in the supermarket is pretty much poison. No, don't feel that way. Go out, and if you want, I walked by Walmart the other day and I saw some sesame chicken. I bought it. I mean, it's not good for you, but I just wanted it, and I had that as my meal, and I felt good. Don't look at it as poison, because remember, anytime you restrict foods, guys, anytime you eliminate anything, let's say you go on an all vegan cleanse and you say, I've got to have nothing but wheatgrass and orange juice for a while. What you're getting rid of is a lot of other nutrients that are legitimate, as well as detoxing. And so you're going to get rid of a lot of poisons in your body, but you're also going to put more in the form of pesticides from the foods that you don't wash sufficiently, and you're going to lack from the protein that you're eliminating. So it's actually good once a week to go out and have some animal food or have some protein if you're not morally objecting to it. Go out and have some junk food. Go out to the movie theater and have some popcorn. Do those sorts of things to keep you sane and to keep you normal, as well as to keep your body a bit with the ability to digest those sorts of things. Because anytime you eliminate something from your body, you're going to lose the ability to digest it if you do it for too long, if you eliminate it for too long. Popping in to say hi, Julie, but have to leave again in a minute. No problem. Glad you could make it. Glad you could make it. There we go. How much food should I eat on OMAD? That depends on you. You should eat enough food generally to fill one plate, no higher than 3 inches, and nothing falling off the sides. That rule works for most people. If you need to adjust it, you certainly can. How do you feel when you eat? What powers you? You don't want to be stuffed. You don't want to have to lay down and take a nap. You shouldn't be eating that much. Guess what, guys? That's another meeting. Y'all probably don't have as many meetings as I have. Every few minutes I have stuff popping up. This is the longest I've gone without having to, with just that right there, invitation to accept a meeting obligation, which I got to go pretty soon here and go back to having more meetings. Thanks for answering. Thomas DeLauer made a video about it today. He says the body switches to fat burning while the liver is used to producing glucose. A lot of what Thomas DeLauer says I think is true. He's right on a lot of things. He's quite a bit of a showman, but he's also, I don't have any problem with what he says. Your body will switch to fat burning. A lot of people don't know, when you have a high glucose spike, when you spike out with eating something unhealthy, that's a great time to start fasting, because your body will kick back over into fat burning, because it'll have to, because your insulin's bringing down your blood glucose too fast, and you're going to have to boost it back up, and that helps you fast actually longer and better. I'm doing OMAD for convenience and also to accompany my wife, who is on weight loss. I love it. However, I eat up to 5,000 calorie meals to keep the body fat. Wow, you have a low 8% body fat. Are there any risks? No. Just, don't go lower than that, man. You shouldn't be lower than about 12% body fat. And here's the thing: having Higher than that, 22 is still not bad. Having a little fat on you does not hurt you. You don't want to go too low. It may be easier for you to add more meals. It just depends. I'm a prophet of common sense. Meatball says, well, don't flatter me, but thank you. Do you have loose skin after your spectacular weight loss? Yes, I do have some loose skin. I'm not particularly proud of, but I mean, life goes on. It doesn't bother me really. Just when I look in the mirror and I'm in those little moments of solace in the mirror where I'm just looking around thinking what could be better about my body? But nobody, I'm 45, so nobody wants to see me shirtless. So what the heck do I care? It's hard to stop sugar. It won't be if you incorporate it into your diet in a smart fashion. If you allow yourself the occasional cookie or pastry with a normal meal, you'll find that you conquer it and that you don't have that dreaded feeling of having to avoid it. But yes, when you're getting started, it is gosh darn hard. For those of you who email me in tears, I get people, some of you on this chat, you guys email me in tears and you're like, oh, this is hard. It is when you start. You feel like you're going to die. And then you realize you didn't. So, but when you guys email me, like right now, I'm getting flushes of emotion back from how stressful that was when I think about you guys going through getting rid of beating your cravings, because it's just unbelievably hard at first. I crave rare steak for many years. Is that normal? Get checked. You may have an iron deficiency or something. Your body sometimes will crave what you lack. The only good meat I ever ate was rare steak, so it's easy. I'd get checked, but no, I think it's probably just you liking a steak. I joke my uncle is a compulsive steak eater, and he's 61 or 62 and about 250, and he loves his steak. And I've tried to get him on other things. He just can't do it. He was the same uncle who wanted to bet me $200 that I could never lose the weight. I could have collected, but I just never held him to it. Can we skip a day to fast? I have not missed in my 100 days. Of course, you can do fast one day, eat what you want, fast the next day, eat what you want. You can. You can do every 2 days. You can do fast, or you can do fast 2 days, feast all day one. You can mix it up, but here's the thing: you don't want to confuse your body, because otherwise you're going to be in a situation where your body doesn't know what you're doing, and you're going to create more stress as a result. I would get on a routine you can maintain. That's why OMAD is an all-time favorite, the way I've laid it out, because you don't have the unpredictability of it. But you can manage it either way. I mean, if you want to eat, have an entire day of gluttonous feasting and then 3 days of nothing, you can, and you'll lose weight, and your blood sugars will be great. Most people. Some people can't handle that. Don't mistake my. If you don't have control of your blood sugar, that's not a good way to go. You want to have a regular pattern where it's a little bit easier to maintain. But if you have normal or subpar or even average or a little more, then you can do stuff like that. That would be my only criticism by way of like bear maintenance. And I've talked about bear maintenance before. If you pick all 7 days of the week, you say, I'm going to eat what I want 3 and fast 4. Or I'm going to eat what I want 4 and fast 3. You can alternate, and you can say, beginning on Friday, I'm going to eat what I want, stopping Sunday. That's a way to maintain weight. The problem is if you have poor blood sugar control, that may not be the way to go. So let me make a caveat there. You want regularity. For those of you who are struggling with your blood sugar, you do need regularity and very little fluctuation, because you don't have as much. I feel more tired waking up in the morning than I want to sleep. Yeah, you might want to get checked, Alon. You might have something else wrong. You might have damaged yourself with your the protein thing. You could have damaged your kidneys, or something else. I don't want to speculate because I don't know. Rebecca says, I love carbs, but I keep it plant-based because I do better and I have better results staying away from processed foods. Yes, you'll find that if you have a juice or a beet, have 1/2 a beet or 1/4 of a beet with 3 apples in a juicer, you're going to get all the sugar you want, but it's going to be sugar that actually helps you lose weight and stops cravings for candy. That's why I love my juicer now, man. I love it. You can make, I made today a parsley with 1/2 a beet with 2 apples and 4 stalks of celery and 4 carrots, and it was delicious, man. Soda doesn't even taste that good. I said, well, for years, what's wrong? Why haven't I been juicing? This is good stuff, and I have less cravings than I've ever had, and I don't have to care anymore. But I don't ever. When will it go easy? You'll have to do it faithfully for a month, Susan. You jumped off a few times, I remember. If you do that, it's going to get harder because your body's going to set a pattern of infidelity, and you're going to say, oh, well, if I'm stressed or if something happens, I can just jump off. Well, that's what you're psychologically telling yourself, and you're making it harder, I'm afraid. But you'll do fine if you say, you got to have, Miss Military has to come out and say, this is what we're doing, we're not stopping. Remember my video on Mission Critical. You've got to do it. I envy you guys that eat both meat and plants. You guys get to switch between the two. Well, I mean, you eat what's around you. Remember my rules, the cardinal principles. Caffeine can destroy all craving for food, but it can also rob you of calcium, and it can also cause you to be dehydrated. So be careful on caffeinated beverages. All right, so we got to wrap up here. Let's talk about what you can do if we know why this is happening. We've investigated the blood sugar challenges you will have. Let's talk about what you can do about it. Number 1, go plant-based OMAD. Avoid, this does not mean you can't have any meat or fats. It means they should be at around 10% or less. Go plant-based OMAD. Avoid going low carb unless you must, or do it temporarily to beat your cravings and then transition into a plant-based OMAD. The reason you don't want to go to low carb first is because, again, you're going to lose the ability to process carbs, so that when you add them back in, your weight's going to shoot up 12 pounds, and you're going to look at the scale and you're going to feel so defeated. Go plant-based OMAD. Avoid low carb unless you have to, which is almost never. If you're going to do low carb, start low carb to get a hold of your cravings and gradually start to transition into a normal plant-based eating. We are biologically adapted as omnivores, but we're still more or less, we're very close to an herbivore. So that's why plant-based works. That's why the enzymes and nutrients of greens and things like that help us so much, because our body is fit to absorb them and you don't crave food. If you give yourself, well, we're going to get to that in a second. So that's the first point. Number 2, apple cider vinegar. If you're doing my plan, you're doing 2 tablespoons the first month every day at the meal with a beverage of your choice. Keep doing that. Apple cider vinegar lowers blood sugar. Number 3, celery. Celery, especially the leaves, lower blood sugar. Have an entire bushel of celery juiced in the morning on an empty stomach with nothing added. Let me comment on Medical Medium. This comes from Medical Medium, and this channel is known for calling out BS. I'm not saying I agree with Medical Medium on everything he says. In fact, I know I don't. But he's absolutely right. Credit where credit is due. If you have celery juice in the morning on an empty stomach, it is superbly beneficial, both for your high levels of hydrochloric acid in your stomach, but also for what you can eat after that. So if you don't have a meal, if you have your meal in the morning, you can do it with celery juice, give it 15 minutes to digest, and then transition into your meal. You will handle fats better. You will not be tired after the meal. You will not be shaky. It will help with everything. Number 3, carrot juice. Just as good as celery is carrot juice. Take 4 carrots, juice them. It is one of the best things you can do for your body. It is, even though it has a lot of sugar, you'll find that you have a lower A1C 3 months out. You'll find that you have a better control of your blood glucose and your food tolerance. So if you go out and eat a pizza after you've had celery, or after juiced celery or juiced carrots, you find that you don't feel bad, you don't feel tired, you don't feel rotten, because your body can handle it. Again, those are super important things. So you have ACV, you have celery, you have carrots, you have AMLA powder, number 5. Your body, you can get it on Amazon. I've talked about it before. Just take a teaspoon of it. It drastically lowers blood glucose in any beverage or anything you have. If you have a meal, you can put it in a calorie-free beverage. It is AMLA powder. It is Indian gooseberry, and it is used over in India to treat diabetics who otherwise would require insulin. Warning, it will drastically lower your blood glucose. So if you're watching this and you have a lot of trouble, you can rely on that. Number 6, ginger. Ginger tea. Just you can put it in a juicer. You can boil it and put it in any type of tea. And like AMLA, it will drastically reduce blood glucose. Number 7, fennel tea, fennel seed tea. You can go and Google these. If you take fennel seeds, you boil them in water. It is very bitter. It is an anti-diuretic, but it also lowers blood glucose in a pretty significant way. So those are the ways you can control your blood glucose and augment your OMAD fasting plan to beat it. If you're just joining this channel and somehow you wound up with YouTube's crazy algorithm, you wound up here, go back and watch my first videos, learn about OMAD, and get started one way or another. To conclude with what we started with, society is filled with food everywhere. You cannot go to sleep mentally. You cannot ignore it. You cannot be apathetic about it. You have to control your eating or you will be a slave to it, and you will absolutely lose the battle to obesity. Look at everyone around you in your life. They're getting fatter, aren't they? Don't join that club. But not only are they getting fatter, they're getting unhealthier. People on OMAD control their blood sugars better than nearly anyone else. Eating in a controlled fashion, that's self-mastery, that's self-ownership. That is what this channel is about. And with that said, I believe I have answered the questions for today. I do need to close and get on with it. We'll see about doing next Friday or the Friday after. We'll see about doing another live broadcast. You guys have a super day.